The Evil Eye archetype is one of the several archetypes that was released to little fanfare, never really saw much experimentation in competitive, and then got future support that made it much better, but didn't actually cause many waves in terms of play. The archetype has a lot of interesting attributes and some powerful effects, so it's worth taking a closer look at Evil Eye and seeing why this mid-deck failed to take off. The Evil Eyes are based primarily around two cards: Yugioh, Watcher of the Evil Eye, and Evil Eye of Selene. Yugioh is a level 4 Dark Fiend with 1600 attack and 1400 defense. It has the effect where, when it's normal summoned, you can add any Evil Eye monster from your deck to your hand besides Yugioh. If this card is equipped with Evil Eye of Selene, as a quick effect, you can target one special summon monster your opponent controls and destroy it once per turn. Then, during the standby phase of your next turn, you have to destroy one card you control. Now, to understand exactly what this looks like in practice, we're going to need to see how Evil Eye of Selene works. This is an equipped spell that can only be equipped to an Evil Eye monster. The equipped monster can't be destroyed by battle or your opponent's card effects. And each time you activate the equipped monster's effect, or activate another Evil Eye spell or trap, you lose 500 life points, and then the equipped monster gains 500 attack permanently. While this card is in your graveyard, you can pay 1000 life points and banish an Evil Eye spell trap from your grave to set this card, and this is a once per turn. These two cards give you a good idea of how most of the Evil Eye archetype works. The monsters all have strong effects when equipped with the equipped spell, and the equipped spell makes just about anything you equip it to a huge threat. The stacked protections as well as the slowly climbing attack can make outing an Evil Eye monster fairly difficult. However, this is also where the weakness of the deck starts to make themselves known. As you can see, Yugioh doesn't come with any way to special summon additional monsters, and that's not something that many other cards in the archetype fix. While there are some monsters that can special summon themselves and spell cards that can special summon monsters in the archetype, they usually don't provide additional searching to really chain things together into the long combos we're familiar with these days. Rather, the deck is built around getting a monster and Evil Eye of Selene into play consistently, and the deck is quite good at that, though this strategy has notable weaknesses. Before we get into the flaws proper, we need to take a look at the archetype in its entirety. Starting with the monsters, we have Basilisk, Familiar of the Evil Eye. This is a level 3 Dark Fiend with 400 attack and 2000 defense. If you control an Evil Eye monster, you can special summon this card from your hand once per turn. Also, on a hard once per turn, you can send an Evil Eye spell or trap from your deck to the graveyard. This can give you extra fodder to reset an Evil Eye of Selene from your graveyard, so it's a fairly useful effect to have access to. This is also one of the couple level 3 monsters in the archetype that can help you spam the board more easily, which we'll discuss later, and does allow for your best form of extension. Medusa, Watcher of the Evil Eye, is another level 4 Dark Fiend with 1400 attack and 1600 defense. A normal summon, it allows you to target a different Evil Eye card in your graveyard and add it back to your hand. Also, if it's equipped with Evil Eye of Selene, as a quick effect, it can banish a monster card from your opponent's graveyard. But during the next standby phase, you have to banish a card from your graveyard. Medusa mainly serves as a way to reoccur important resources in later turns of the game, though lacking many free extenders means this often won't actually let you put up a full board on its own. The final main deck monster from the first wave of support is Archetypes, Familiar of the Evil Eye. This is a level 3 monster with the effect where you can target an Evil Eye spell or trap you control, and then until the end of the next turn, the next time it would be destroyed, it isn't. If you have another Evil Eye monster, you can special summon this card from your graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field, and you can only do this once per turn. Archetypes is a good extender with certain other cards in the archetype, but it's not that good to actually summon on its own. The deck also has 2 Link Boss monsters, Gorgon, Empress of the Evil Eye, and Zerziel, Ruler of the Evil Eye. Gorgon is a Link 2 that, while equipped with the Evil Eye, can target and negate an opponent's monster, but has to destroy a monster it points to during the next standby phase. Zerziel is a Link 3 with a quick effect destruction of any card while it's equipped with Evil Eye of Selene, but it has to negate a card it points to during the next standby phase. These boss monsters are fine, but generally not that much better than a Zerziel with an Evil Eye attached, so they were summoned somewhat sparingly before later support came around and made them far more practical. With these monsters in mind, we can start to understand the problems that the spell and trap support needs to solve. For one, the deck is extremely normal summon reliant. While your familiars can special summon themselves out, they don't actually do anything on their own, so you don't want to only open with them. You really only want to use them as further extensions for rank 3 plays in addition to normal summoning Zerziel to set up your monster pop. This can leave you very vulnerable to hand traps, as negating your normal summon can just be the end of your turn if you don't already have a lot of extenders in hand. The problem is that those extenders aren't that great as cards in of themselves, so you don't really want to fill your deck with them. Besides, if you wanted to get into generic rank 3 plays, you could just play Terratop and it was a lot stronger. Essentially, the monsters sort of split the deck into two awkward game plans. One trying to make a strong monster with an equip spell that's very difficult for your opponent to out, and the other that's just spamming rank 3 monsters. The spell and trap support solidifies the direction of the initial deck away from rank 3 spam, giving the equip spell plan a lot more teeth. Most players, when hearing that the deck is based around an equip spell, will immediately worry that the deck will get 2 for 1 constantly without being able to protect its monster. And the spell and trap support has a lot of answers for that exact problem. For starters, we have Evil Eye of Gorgoneo, a second equip spell that treats its name as Evil Eye of Selene while equipped to a monster. It also has the effect where, while your life points are lower than your opponent's, the equipped monster gains attack equal to the difference. Also, while this card is in your graveyard, you can banish it and discard an Evil Eye card to add an Evil Eye spell or trap from your deck to your hand. Gorgoneo is mostly here to make the deck more consistent, and it does a great job at that. You never really want to equip it to anything, but having the option to use it to turn on your monsters means that the deck very rarely runs into the complete fail case of just not having the equip spell it needs, and the graveyard effect further stops this from happening by letting you trade an Evil Eye card for whatever you need in a pinch. This card is very good with the familiars. Catoplebus likes being discarded, and Basilisk can let you dump it from your deck to make your plays more consistent, both of which are very helpful use cases. The deck's field spell also increases its consistency. Evil Eye Domained Pareidolia lets you add an Evil Eye monster from your deck to hand on activation, and has the effect where, if you would take battle damage from an opponent's attack while you have an Evil Eye of Selene in your back row, you can make your opponent take that damage as well. Also, if it's destroyed by card effect, you can target an Evil Eye monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. In this deck, Pareidolia is mostly just a reinforcement of the army. The other effects are helpful, but they're incidental compared to being able to add any Evil Eye monster from your deck to your hand. The last two spell and trap cards from the initial wave of support that are especially interesting are Evil Eye Retribution and Evil Eye Awakening. Retribution is a counter trap with the effect where, when your opponent activates a spell or trap card, if you have an Evil Eye monster, you can negate the activation and destroy that card. If you have an Evil Eye of Selene, this card's activation and effect can't be negated. Retribution is a very important card in the deck, thanks to how weak it can be to spell and trap card removal. If Evil Eye of Selene gets hit with the Harpy's Feather Duster or Cosmic Cyclone, you can be in a really bad spot. Retribution not only saves you from these kinds of effects and trap removal, it can also be used to stop your opponent's plays before they even get started. Evil Eye Awakening is one of the more powerful spell extenders in the archetype. This normal spell has the effect to special summon an Evil Eye monster from your hand or graveyard. Or if you have an Evil Eye of Selene, it can special summon directly from your deck, and on a hard once per turn. This is obviously a nice way to extend your plays, and being able to summon a monster directly from the deck is always strong enough to keep a card in contention for play in an archetype. The rest of the spell and trap card support is mildly useful, but nothing that really stands out. Evil Eye Confrontation is an archetype mystical space typhoon that can become an archetype cosmic cyclone. Evil Eye Mesmerism can steal an opponent's monster when they special summon it and let you treat it as an Evil Eye monster. Evil Eye Defeat is an emergency evacuation device that can bounce 2 monsters if you have an Evil Eye of Selene. Evil Eye Reemergence special summons a familiar of the Evil Eye token, and summons 2 if you have an Evil Eye of Selene, but locks you into special summoning fiends for the rest of the turn. And finally, Evil Eye Repose does a bunch of effects that are all kinda bad. When activated, it can draw you a card if you banish an Evil Eye card from your graveyard. After damage calc, it can banish a monster you attacked with a monster equipped with Evil Eye of Selene, and finally, if it's destroyed, it can target 3 of your banished Evil Eye cards and return them to the graveyard. Many of these cards are worth playing, but in limited number or only in specific builds as they're somewhat situational. These spell and trap cards do give the deck more consistency and power, but they're not particularly good at letting the deck spam out a ton of bodies. For a deck with only 4 monsters, their effects are extremely limited. Medusa is a card you honestly don't want to draw very often, unless you already have a Basilisk in your graveyard. Normal summon it is unlikely to lead you to have meaningful extension. You also don't have easy ways to send Catoplebus to the grave, which means that getting even 2 bodies into play consistently is pretty shoddy. The familiars also have pretty weak effects outside of being able to swarm the board, as the deck doesn't have any spell or trap cards that straight up generate advantage from the graveyard, and Catoplebus protection is honestly pretty much irrelevant. The deck is just really limited in terms of being able to put up generic material. So if your opponent does have an out to your Cerzio, you're usually just completely out of luck. The split between having cards that are okay at letting you combo but do nothing else, and having monsters that actually have useful effects but require a normal summon leaves the deck never really being able to do much more than put up one form of interaction in a turn in Engine. Really, the best thing you can do is make one monster with interaction on it that's quite difficult for your opponent to interact with, leading to the deck's famous end board. Surzeal equipped with Evil Eye. This is actually better than it looks, as while Surzeal isn't that good at stopping your opponent's plays, it is hard to get rid of with its multiple forms of protection. This makes it a pseudo towers monster with strong interaction on it. The problem here is that you're weak to all of the same things as a towers deck, but your monster is far easier to interact with. Not only will you still be weak to cards like kaijus, but your monster is also weak to being negated with cards like Infinite Impermanence. You also completely lose to any sort of Book of Moon effects, as this will also make your equipped spells fall off. This makes your end board very easy to out for most strategies, especially ones that can afford to play a lot of hand traps. Hand traps in general are a problem for the deck, as at this point you didn't have that many ways to play through such cards. You had generic support like Called by the Grave and Triple Tactics talents to shore up the weaknesses, but if you opened several in-engine cards, sometimes you'd fail to get Eye of Selene if you got hand trapped because the monsters are quite limited in terms of power level. This also makes the deck pretty weak while going second, as a couple of well-timed interrupts is often enough to stop the deck from committing to its plays. On top of all this, you are still reliant on keeping a specific equip spell active for your interactions to even work, which means that your deck also loses dispel and trap removal. A small issue with the deck is also that you paid a lot of life, which meant that the deck was easy to scam wins from with one large monster. This isn't that important in the grand scheme of things, but the deck was overall slightly worse at stopping these scams than decks like Dynamorphia. And since you were putting all of your eggs into one basket, if that card got removed, even if your opponent didn't have a lot going on, you often still lost that turn. Overall, the deck is okay in terms of power level for the point it was printed, but it just has extra weaknesses that other decks just didn't have. The deck revolved around a specific spell card and falls apart without it, and is one of the most normal summon-reliant decks from the time of its printing. Luckily, the deck would eventually receive 2 new support cards that fixed this specific issue with the deck. Basiltrice, Familiar the Evil Eye, is another level 3 with the effect, where if you control an Evil Eye monster, you can special summon it from your hand or graveyard as a quick effect, but then you banish it when it leaves the field, and you can only do this once per turn. Also as a quick effect, on your opponent's turn, link summon an Evil Eye monster using monsters you control as material, and you can also use Evil Eye equip spells you control as material. Basiltrice gives the deck a ton of extra flexibility simply through existing. Not only do you have twice as many cards that can special summon themselves from your hand, but this makes plays involving discarding a card with Evil Eye Gorgonio more common as well. The ability to tag into a Link monster is nice, however, you're usually better using it to go into more rank 3 plays nowadays. While before, getting 2 level 3 monsters in play was somewhat difficult, with this card and the other support card the deck received, getting 2 or 3 level 3 monsters in play is way more consistent than it ever was before. This can let you make Xyz monsters like number 75, Bamboozling Gossip Shadow, and Ashura King that can make playing into your board far more difficult. The second card that pushed the deck's power level was Evil Eyes Unleashed, a normal spell card with the effect where you send an Evil Eye spell or trap and an Evil Eyes monster from your deck to your graveyard, to add an Evil Eyes equip spell from your deck to your hand. But for the rest of the turn, each time you activate a non-Evil Eyes card, you lose 500 life points. Also, if you link summon an Evil Eyes Link monster, you can banish this card from your graveyard to equip an Evil Eye equip spell from your graveyard to that monster. Now, this card does 2 amazing things for the deck. The first being by far the best extender in the archetype. Being able to send both a Basiltrice and an Evil Eyes Gorgonio to your graveyard not only gives you a free body, but also a free search on top of grabbing the most important card in the archetype. The graveyard effect also makes Basiltrice's ability to tag into a Link monster as a quick effect far more powerful, as it means you can tag into a Gorgon or a Zurzeal to have their effect online, which it also facilitates by putting Basiltrice into the graveyard in the first place. This means that an end board of an equipped Zurzeal and a Basiltrice is now 2 interrupts instead of just 1, which is a huge boost to the deck's power level. The deck could now also get to this board every game with a Resolve Zurzeal, as you could use its effect to add Evil Eyes Unleashed and use that card to send Basiltrice to summon it later. These 2 cards did make the deck far more powerful and consistent. However, they were ultimately too little too late. These cards were released in the set Photon Hypernova, which also introduced the start of the Gold Pride archetype and several pieces of the Kashtira deck, including Kashtira Arise Heart. To be perfectly honest, Kashtira Fenrir alone is better than anything this deck could do at this time. Comparing it to the meta tyrant of its time is a bit of an unflattering comparison, of course, but even more rogue options around this time could do so much more with so much less. Even generic engines like Bystials offered similar amounts of interaction and card advantage without eating up your normal summons. The cards were, ultimately, just not as powerful as the rest of the metagame, especially as we entered the more modern style of card design presented in most archetypes today. Nowadays, the best archetypes are full of monsters that can both special summon themselves and find more cards for your combo, which allows them to play more hand traps and counters to hand traps, or extend through more interaction if they draw their engine pieces. Either way, the decks often end up totally fine no matter what they draw. Evil Eye is from an older style of card design, where decks had specific cards that they wanted to normal summon, and other cards that they only used for their engine. This streamlining of card design has huge ripple effects that make any of the older decks with this design so much worse, as they're ground down slowly by slightly more efficient plays and cards. Evil Eye has this problem worse than a lot of other archetypes, because, as much as they did try to help the deck out, having to play equip spells like Evil Eye of Selene or Gorgonio is just ever so slightly awkward. Having two playmakers that require normal summon is awkward, and having only one monster that special summons itself and actually has a useful effect is a really hard pill to swallow at this point in the game. By the time the deck received these good support cards, it was just power crept out of relevance at a fundamental level. And that's the fundamental issue surrounding the archetype. In the modern day, Evil Eye is a fine combo deck that requires you to play too many bad cards as engine requirements that's just far too weak to interaction. It didn't play particularly well with other decks either, thanks to requiring Evil Eye of Selene to always be in rotation, which, while the deck could find the equip spell consistently, this often took up your normal summon or required you to play more consistency boosters to turn your cards online. Unfortunately, even before this rise in power level pushing the deck out of contention, the deck just didn't have the tools to compete without the later waves of support. The deck was even brickier and easier to disrupt, having an incredibly difficult time doing anything besides summoning Surzeal and equipping it with Evil Eye of Selene. The other decks surrounding it were far better than anything it could do at every point in the deck's history, and as a result it has largely been forgotten, despite being closer to playability than many duelists may realize.